So now it's time to talk about how to record drums. I recently did a drum recording session, and to do it I went to Studio D in Sausalito. One of the main reasons I did is because of this recording console. The microphone preamps and the EQs were designed by Rupert Neve. There's his little signature plaque right there. And it's a great sounding console, but just the preamps and the EQs were the main reason I use this board. Now this is a really expensive recording console, really well designed, beautiful sounding desk. Costs around $750,000. To go into a studio like this, it's not cheap, but I really wanted to get world-class drum sounds. Check this out. These are the power supplies for that big old console that you just saw. Now, just so you know, it's really best to record drums, if not the whole band actually, in a big professional studio like this. But if you can't afford to go into a professional studio, at the end of this section, we're going to show you ways to pare down how many microphones you use and such, so you can record great sounding drums with less equipment. Again, part of what you're recording when you're recording drums is the room itself, so a professional studio is preferred. But once again, we'll definitely show you ways to pare it down. One of the other main reasons I went there is because of the room itself. Their studio is an amazing sounding studio. You put drums in this room and just hit a drum and it sounds great. And that's part of what you're recording when you're recording drums is the room itself. Now to control the acoustics, I used these surfaces here that you're seeing called gobos. In fact, I just went by a gobo here, and this is in a little ISO room that they had built for recording guitar cabinets and bass cabinets, but we're not going to be using that today. So I started getting things prepared in the control room while Kevin Hayes, a world-class studio drummer and a world-class live drummer, was out in the studio area getting ready. And right here you see Kevin tuning up his snare drum. Now Kevin is currently playing primarily with Robert Cray, but when he's in the Bay Area, he's really the #1 session player around. A lot of producers and engineers I had talked with told me, get Kevin, he's the guy. So his drums sounded great, and the rest of the work was up to me to get the drums sounding good in the control room and to get Pro Tools ready as well. So we ended up using some pretty unusual mics on his drum. Typically you wouldn't mic a kick this way. We used two mics, a Neumann FET47 and a 421 inside the kick. But normally you're going to use one microphone like an AKG D112 or a D12 or an RE20. Those are really popular kick drum mics. They all sound really great. Now for the snare, we did something very typical. We mic'd the top and the bottom of the snare using an SM57. And you can see on the toms there, we use Sennheiser 421 microphones, similar to the mic that we put inside the kick. Now those are very typical to put on the toms. In fact, almost every drum recording session I've ever been involved in or ever seen the mics for 421s were almost always the choice. An SM57, definitely a #1 choice for snares. This is an AKG 452 microphone. They're reissuing those now. I'm showing you the SM57 here at a little bit of a closer angle so you can see exactly where we place the mics. Now, even though we place the mics here, it might not sound good on your kit, so you might have to move the mics until they sound right. This is just a starting point, and these microphones as well are just suggestions, but you'll find them to be very common in professional recording studios. To recap what we used on the top a Shure SM57, and on the bottom a SM57, or you could use an AKG 452 or even a Neumann KM184. There's other mics that'll work well for this, but these are good suggestions and good starting points. For the toms, we use Sennheiser 421s. You could, if you're on a tight budget, use SM57s. We ended up using 414s on the toms and it sounded really good. Now here's another pair of AKG 452s that we used on the overhead mics. And overhead mics, it's very popular to use either 452s, KM184s, 414s, or a good pair of Neumann microphones. There are a lot of choices out there, but if you get two good matched condenser mics, you can also use these on your vocals and for acoustic guitar. Now once again, we had a great sounding room, so we used Neumann U67 for the room mics. If you're on a budget, these would be the first mics you'd cut out if you have budgetary issues, which most musicians do, so don't feel bad if you do. Here are a few suggestions for room mics, but there's a lot of different things that'll work really well for room mics. Don't be afraid to experiment and try things out. And once again, here's a little more recap. And you can see here I put the 414 on the tom. And once again, there's the SM57 microphone on the top. We have another one roughly parallel to that on the bottom, which we flipped out of phase. Here's the floor tom with a 414 microphone on it as well. And we ended up using 3 414s on the toms for this particular session. Once again, there's a lot of different choices out there for tom mics. These are just really good places to begin. Here's the overall drum kit. Now, a couple other things you'll notice. We've got a packing blanket over the kick drum. This is to help get rid of the ring, like the doom, longer ring of a kick drum. This will tighten it up. We also, for one song that was a ballad, we put these 2 gobos on each side of the drum kit and one in front of the drum kit to get rid of the room ambience for a particular song. Be aware that there are room acoustic issues going on whenever you're recording drums. Room acoustics, you can use sound absorbers to deaden the reverb of the room, like packing blankets, gobos, or insulation is actually really popular in larger studios to build absorbers with. Also, place the mics where they sound good. Don't be afraid to use your ears and to experiment as well. It took us a long time, and most of the day was spent getting tones on the kit. We'd experiment here with a little bit of playing, then we'd go back and mess around with some more tones. And Kevin was really great about that, incredibly patient. And finally, after a lot of work, we were able to start recording drums. So once again, drum mics. You could start by miking the whole kit like we did, and this is pretty common in a high-end studio situation. 1 on the kick, 2 on the snare, toms, hi-hat, ride cymbal. That's an optional microphone. Overheads, we didn't do a ride cymbal mic, but you could use hi-hat type mics. Now if you're limited, go with 5 microphones. Do the kick, the snare top and bottom, and overheads. So there's 5 microphones. If you want to pare it down from there, you can also even go with 4 microphones. Maybe just the kick, the snare mic, just the bottom mic only, because actually the overheads will pick up the top, so you could try this. Or if you're really short on microphones and you're just starting off, just mic the kick and the overheads. This is how a lot of Led Zeppelin records were done, so it's a really good technique. So what we just showed you there was a professional drum recording session. You might not have those kind of resources to go into a studio like that, or to go out and buy all those preamps and microphones and all the gear we used in that particular recording session. But once again, we showed you how to scale that back, how to use less mics, and great recordings can be done with a lot less gear. We just had a lot of resources at that particular session, so I wanted to show you how it's done in the big school. And if you do book a studio for a day, you see there, we got 7 songs done at that recording session, which was actually, it's a lot of songs for one day. But Kevin was on it. I had everything really well prepared. The engineers were on it, so we had a really great time and got a lot done. Let's move into the next section. We're going to show you how to record some bass guitar.